Welcome back. This story is called Shawn Burgess. Shawn Burgess was an inmate at the Seminole County Jail when I was there. When I went to the Seminole County Jail, I asked to be placed in protective custody because I had heard from a friend that protective custody is the safest place to be in the Seminole County Jail. What I didn't realize was that 90% of the people in protective custody were either rapists or child molesters. Okay? That's why they were in protective custody, because they would get their asses kicked if they were in general population. So here I am living amongst the rapists and the child molesters. Shawn Burgess was in protective custody. He told me, he's the one that told me about they call them SOs, sex offenders. He's like, see all these guys? They're all sex offenders, SOs. He was not an SO. He was in protective custody, he told me, because he was a fight risk. They called him a fight risk. Well, I never saw Shawn, lift a finger to anybody, but that's why he was there. Shawn was very popular. He was the most popular guy in the cell block. His bunk was on the end of the room. They had like a big room with a bunch of bunks. His was at the end. He would sit, with his back against the wall and just kind of like hold court, kind of like The Godfather. And people would come up and sit next to him, but only certain people could sit next to him. If you sat next to Shawn, that was pretty special. If you sat on his bunk, he was like a jailhouse MacGyver. He could like make anything or fix anything. He did all kinds of jerry rigging. Like one time, he took a little plastic tube from the inside of a ballpoint pen, and he turned the faucet into a drinking fountain, so we could drink water out of the faucet. One time when I was in jail, I shit in my pants. I sharted. I was standing in line waiting for something. I don't remember what. I had to fart. I'm like, okay, go ahead, let it out. Plop. Sure enough, right into my underwear, right into my pants. And I said, Shawn, what do? I just sharted myself. So he and another guy named Pombo, who's got his own card, took my pants, stained pants, into the shower and put the shower on and twisted them in my pants like this, over and over again. And eventually, the water, washed out my, the shit. And at one point, the water splashed into Shawn's face, and he was like, "Oh, gross!" But he did it. I mean, these guys did this for me. I mean, they didn't have to, but Shawn and Pombo did this for me. The highlight of my experience with Shawn Burgess was when it came to marijuana. Shawn told me that you could not get marijuana in jail. All you could get is something that was called K2 or Spice at that time, which is a synthetic marijuana that you don't get anymore because it causes psychosis, and it was sold, over the counter. He said you can get Spice, but you can't get marijuana. So I'm like, okay, we'll get Spice, because it's basically the same thing. I had to pay for this, and you pay for this with bags of coffee. You order bags of coffee from the commissary for $5 a bag. It cost me 5 bags, $25 to get this marijuana, this Spice smuggled into the jail. It's smuggled in, by the way, by the trustees. The trustees are the inmates that push the carts around with all the food. They go to all the different places in the jail. They're the ones that bring the drugs into the jail, the trustees. So I had 5 bags of coffee it cost me to get this little bag. It finally showed up. It took like weeks. It was this little tiny bag, like this big, like a little ball of this Spice. Well, Shawn took this bag and he made a rolling paper out of a piece of paper that goes around the toilet paper roll, kind of a wax paper. He made a little rolling paper out of it, sprinkled the stuff in, took little pieces of toilet paper, rolled them up like this to cut it, to stretch it out, and then made this joint. Now, that's part one. Part two is, how do you light this thing? There's no lighters in jail. You have to figure out a way to light it. Here's what he did. He took this joint in his hand. He stood on a table, on top of the table, and he took the cover off of the fluorescent light fixture that was on the ceiling. So he actually removed the cover. I mean, if a guard had walked in, we would have all been busted. I mean, we've all been sent to solitary confinement. But he took this cover off the fluorescent tube, or off the fluorescent bulbs. He was standing on the top of this table. He had the joint in one hand, and with his other hand, he was rotating this fluorescent tube against the metal. So the tube had like 2 prongs, metal prongs, and then there was a metal plate inside the fixture where they made their connection. And he was rotating it, hoping to create a spark by rotating this metal against the metal. And then not only was he going to try to create a spark, but he was actually going to try to catch the spark on the end of the joint. He was going to light the joint this way. I'm like, there's no way it's gonna work. Sure enough, after about 20 minutes, bam, it was lit. The joint was lit. So now we're there, the joint's been lit. All of a sudden, there were 8 guys. 8 guys showed up. As soon as I saw that, that joint was going on, I had maybe 2 puffs. That's all I got out of the whole joint. And eventually, the reason why Shawn was in jail was because he was arrested in Seminole County he was charged with a home invasion. Here's what he told me. He said that there was an elderly couple somewhere in Seminole County, 2 white guys, banged on their door, bang, 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 bang. They opened the door, it was a home invasion. The 2 guys went into the house and they robbed this elderly couple. And according to Shawn, the old man said that the 2 guys that ran in had their t-shirts over their face, like this. And during the robbery, one of the robbers grabbed this guy's chain. The old man had a chain on his neck and ripped it off his neck. Okay? The police came and they took the old man, they drove him around, like around the area where like homeless kids were hanging out. And they saw Shawn. And the guy said, that's one of the robbers. Well, Shawn's theory was, that's ridiculous because the robbers had their t-shirts over their face. How could he possibly identify me? So he identified Shawn. They searched him. Sure enough, he had the necklace on him. Shawn had the necklace on him. Shawn claimed that he bought it. He bought it from somebody. He wouldn't say who. And he ended up getting 7 years. He got 7 years for that. Now, Shawn was a career criminal. But before you judge him, because people like to judge Shawn Burgess, you have to understand what happened to him. When Shawn was 15 years old, he came home from school one day. He was in high school, came home from school one day. His parents had moved. They'd moved during the day while he was in school. They moved. The house was vacant. The door was locked and the house was vacant. They abandoned him like that at age 15. So just imagine if that had happened to you, what your life would be like. So basically, he was taking care of himself from that moment on. And he eventually, like I said, he eventually got 7 years for his crime. And he told me he'd been in prison before this Seminole County jail. And he told me that he liked prison. He said he liked prison because he was a hustler. He never told me what his hustle was, but he said he was a hustler. And when you're a hustler, you can do really well in prison. You can live very comfortably in prison. So he went on to prison and, I never saw him again. But he was a friend. He was definitely an alpha male. He definitely had the whole group was paying attention to him. And that's the story of Shawn Burgess. Be sure to read my book, Broccoli Time by Dante Allen, available now on Amazon Books as the best parenting book you will ever read.